So hello everyone, and welcome to Let's Play a little bit of Creeper World 3 Abraxis. Now this is a game that recently came out on Congregate, and I'm just gonna play a little bit through it now, maybe some maps like 4 or 5 or something. Because I don't really want to play all of it. It's a pretty long game, and it's pretty much always the same. You just keep repeating the same steps over and over again, and apply it to each stage. So I was gonna give you some examples of what this game looks like, some maps I'm gonna play through. I don't know, I don't really have a lot of plans going into this, but I'm just gonna wing it, I guess. Now, if you haven't played Creeper World before, basically it's a sort of strategy game where you have a base that you, obviously, as you see right now, trying to get bigger and bigger. And your goal is to defeat the creeper. And the creeper is this blue stuff right here. It's not actually like a sort of enemy that attacks you. It's more like a sort of threat that slowly creeps up to you. That's why it's called a creeper. And in order to fight the creeper, you have to fight back the slime that's coming at you, the creeper. And you do that with like some sort of, well, there's multiple weapons like cannons, or you can use something called anti-creeper later on, which is pretty overpowered, and we're gonna get to that later. Right now on this first stage you don't really have a whole lot of buildings that you can build, but we have all the stuff we need to defeat the creeper, obviously. So the creeper is gonna crawl out of these little, well, sort of sources right here, and it's gonna flood the entire stage. And if you hover over, let me just see this. Actually making sure that my mouse is actually showing up. I don't even know if it does. Whatever. It doesn't really matter if it doesn't. So basically, if you hover over the creeper, you see on the bottom down here, next to the menu, it shows you a little bit of, it shows you a bar that goes from 1 to 10, and that bar shows you how high what you're pointing at is right now. It shows you in like brown or something how high the area itself is, like the ground. Like if I'm on a wall, it goes to 9, and if you hover over something that has creeper on it, you see in blue how high the creeper is. It also shows you later on how high the anti-creeper is, which is not that important, but still nice to know. And the most important part is you want to know how high the creeper is on these walls. So you see right here, the creeper is just a tiny smidgen above 1. And this wall right here has a height 5, so this creeper right here needs to fill up all the way up to 5 in order to actually flow over this. Which means that until it gets that high, we have like a ton of time at our disposal. More important stuff is also over here. This creeper has a height of 5 right now, and the wall right next to it is 10, so we're pretty much safe from everything in the stage right now. Like, all of this creeper is gonna take a ton of time to get really high and actually flow over the walls. And in the meantime, we can use, actually, should build that. We can build a very special building called the Nullifier, and a Nullifier, as the name might suggest, can actually nullify these sources and make them completely useless. And that is the goal in basically any stage in this game. We're gonna try and nullify all the creeper sources. So usually, you want to try and build a Nullifier right next to the source, but obviously you can't do it if there's creeper there. So you need to like push back the creeper far enough that at some point you are actually in range to build a Nullifier next to it. Whoops, you need to do that. Also very important are these relays. Actually, I should go over some of the buildings. These are collectors. Around them, they like generate a green area around them, and this green area basically means how much energy they are creating. The more energy, the more green area they have around them, the more energy they create. And obviously you need energy for, well, pretty much anything, which is building stuff, supplying cannons, and all of that. I also have a little bar over here that shows you your deficit. Like if you have, if your energy, how do I call it? If you generate more energy than you need, or if you use up more energy than you are generating. So if you're building something, you usually use more energy than you create, but as soon as the building is stopped, of course you're not gonna need that energy anymore. The only important part really is that you can build stuff fast, and all your cannons should always be supplied, so you just need some energy to supply the cannons, which is actually not that much. I built like way too many collectors, but that's okay. Also there's these relays, and relays are basically used to supply power lines everywhere. Now you have these collectors right here, they also are used to supply power lines everywhere. So if you have something like a cannon or mortar, it needs to be connected to a power line so it can be supplied. And you can just build them next to a collector, or if you have to go really far distances, you can use a relay, because relays have longer power lines. As you can see, the power line goes all the way over there, and you can use that to create some defenses in faraway places that you might not reach with collectors, and they're actually quite important. Well, I'll use a lot of them later on. Also, I'm pausing a lot in the beginning stages, not as much later on, but at least in the beginning stages, because I'm usually playing on like 4 times speed or something, and I don't really want to be going around planning that much if I'm while the creeper is flowing. So I just basically have more time to plan my steps. Also, usually you want to have a fair number of cannons and then a handful, like not as many of these mortars, because mortars, I think they take more energy and they're not quite as effective against actually making sure your base doesn't get overwhelmed. It pushes, like, cannons are really good, or these pulse cannons right here are really good at making sure, like as you can see over here, that the creeper doesn't actually reach your base. Like it keeps it at bay. And the mortars are the thing that actually push back the creeper. So you want to keep them at bay, and when they're at bay you want to push them back with the mortar. But you don't actually need that many mortars to effectively push it back. As you can see, some mortars, the mortars can actually fire quite far, so it can help you reaching the sources, and attacking at the sources a pretty good place to fire, because that means that it won't have the time to spread anywhere. Obviously I won't have to like go over all the things in this game that much once we actually get into some later stages. Also, something that I'm doing right now, which is not that good, and I probably shouldn't do it, is building new buildings everywhere. As you can see, you can actually move buildings around, or at least you can move these cannons and mortars around, and that's usually what you want to do most of the time, so you don't have to rebuild everything. But it doesn't really matter, because I have quite a lot of energy right now. I can build some more to make sure I'm always supplied. Something that's explained later on, but I already know it. You can build stuff on dead creepers, and it makes the building a ton more powerful than it usually is. Like if you build a collector on there, it becomes a super collector or something. It's not that important on this stage, and it's usually not important at all, even in later stages, but it's a nice little thing you can have going. And it can help quite a bit sometimes in certain situations. I want to move closer to the source, so that my mortars can shoot into this pool over there. And usually that's also how the majority of this game goes. You just build up a base at the beginning, and then you sort of leapfrog your way to the sources and destroy the sources. Now I've taken quite a bit with this stage. Usually the stage goes a lot faster, but I wanted to like show you some stuff and explain some stuff. And next stage I'm gonna be trying to be faster.